everybody. I promised you I'd bring you some Edgar Allan Poe today, so that's what I'm going to do. And I got all dressed up for you, as you can see. I've actually had this outfit, all the pieces put together since about mid-February, and have had nowhere to wear it. So I figured I'd wear it for you. It's completely fake leather, pants and top and everything. And I was going to remember the name of the website I got it from, but I can't, so I won't tell you. Little steampunky accents to go along with. But right now I'm going to actually switch to my other glasses so that I can actually see, because these I bought to wear when I'm wearing contacts, but I really don't want to be putting my fingers in my eyes right now, so no contacts for me. So I'm going to switch these out so I can actually see what's going on in the world. So, so let's talk about Edgar Allan Poe. So I would say he is probably the only author that I fell in love with as a child, and my love continues. I've probably read most of what he's written, even through his essays on poetry and things of that kind. So I was thinking that maybe we'd do a little Edgar Allan Poe reading because, well, he's fun. And what I love about him, though, is he has a very elegant vocabulary, and he uses it very, very well. I love to read his stuff out loud when I'm not tripping over words that I have to go look up because I don't know what they mean. So I pulled this off the shelf recently. This is the very big book of all things Edgar Allan Poe. I think I picked it up on clearance sale at a Barnes & Noble years ago. This is the complete stories and poetry and his critiques and his essays on poetry. And there's some biographical information and stuff in here as well. That's probably the only thing in here that I haven't at least glanced through. So I was originally going to read for you a story of his called Some Words with a Mummy, which is about the reanimation of a mummy, go figure. And as I was doing a run through this morning, I realized it was just a little bit on the long side. So I decided I'd go for something a little shorter. I'm going to start off with one of his shorter poems, and then I'm going to move into reading Silence, a Fable, which is a nice short story about a demon. Because, you know, Poe. So I went back and forth about what poem I would read. There's so many of his that I love. I decided to go with A Dream Within a Dream. So, take this kiss upon the brow, and in parting from you now, thus much let me avow, you are not wrong who deem that my days have been a dream. Yet if hope has flown away in a night or in a day, in a vision or in none, is it therefore the less gone? All that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream. I stand amid the roar of a surf-tormented shore, and I hold within my hand grains of the golden sand. How few, yet how they creep through my fingers to the deep, while I weep, while I weep. Oh God, can I not grasp them in a tighter clasp? Oh God, can I not save one from the pitiless wave? Is all that we see or seem but a dream within a dream? There you go. There's a dream within a dream for you. My introduction to Poe came, I was in the 7th grade, and we were in upstate New York, and we needed, even in 7th grade, we had to have a reading class. And I went to this class, and he handed out the reading list for what we were going to read over the course of the year, and I had read every single thing on the list. So he offered me the 8th grade reading list, and there was maybe one book on there that I hadn't read yet. So in his scramble to give me something to do for our first book report thing, he handed me some Poe. Now, I know most people will tell you that their first Poe was The Telltale Heart, but not me. He handed me Murders in the Rue Morgue. And I fell so in love with everything about the way the man wrote. I loved that he was weird like me. I loved that he put words together in ways that I would never have considered in the first place. So anyway, like I said, I switched stories I'm going to read. This one is much shorter than the other one. He does have a few that are very short. Some of them are not quite as short. They're almost novellas. But this one is called Silence, a Fable. And it's basically a man recounting a story told to him by a demon. "Listen to me," said the demon, as he placed his hand upon my head. "The region of which I speak is a dreary region in Libya, by the borders of the river Zaire, and there is no quiet there, nor silence. The waters of the river have a saffron and sickly hue, and they flow not onward to the sea, but palpitate forever and forever beneath the red eye of the sun with a tumultuous and convulsive motion. For many miles on either side of the river's oozy bed is a pale desert of gigantic water lilies. They sigh one unto the other in that solitude, and stretch toward the heavens their long and ghastly necks, and nod to and fro their everlasting heads. And there is a indistinct murmur which cometh out from among them, like the rushing of subterranean water, and they sigh one unto the other. But there is a boundary to their realm, the boundary of the dark, horrible, lofty forest. There, like the waves about the Hebrides, the low underwood is agitated continually, but there is no wind throughout the heaven. And the tall primeval trees rock eternally hither and thither with a crashing and mighty sound, and from their high summits, one by one, drop everlasting dews. And at the roots, strange poisonous flowers lie writhing in perturbed slumber. And overhead, with a rustling and loud noise, the gray clouds rush westwardly forever, until they roll, a cataract, over the fiery wall of the horizon. But there is no wind throughout the heaven. And by the shores of the river Zaire there is neither quiet nor silence. It was night, and the rain fell, and falling it was rain, but having fallen it was blood. And I stood in the morass of the tall lilies, and the rain fell upon my head, and the lilies sighed one unto the other in solemnity of their desolation. And all at once the moon arose through the thin ghastly mist, and was crimson in color. And mine eyes fell upon a huge gray rock, which stood by the shore of the river, and was lighted by the light of the moon. And the rock was gray, and ghastly, and tall, and the rock was gray. Upon its front were characters engraven in the stone. And I walked through the morass of water lilies until I came close unto the shore, that I might read the characters upon the stone, but I could not decipher them. And I was going back into the morass when the moon shone a fuller red, and I turned and looked again upon the rock and upon the characters, and the characters were desolation. And I looked up, and there stood a man upon the summit of the rock, and I hid myself among the water lilies, that I might discover the actions of the man. And the man was tall and stately in form, and was wrapped up from his shoulders to his feet in the toga of old Rome. And the outlines of his figure were indistinct, but his features were the features of a deity. For the mantle of the night and of the mist and of the moon and of the dew had left uncovered the features of his face. And his brow was lofty with thought, and his eye wild with care. And in the few furrows upon his cheek I read the fables of sorrow and weariness and disgust with mankind, and a longing after solitude. And the man sat upon the rock and leaned his head upon his hand and looked out upon the desolation. He looked down into the low, unquiet shrubbery and up into the tall primeval trees, and up higher at the rustling heaven, and into the crimson moon. And I lay close within shelter of the lilies, and observed the actions of the man. And the man trembled in the solitude, but the night waned, and he sat upon the rock. And the man turned his attention from the heaven, and looked out upon the dreary river Zaire, and upon the yellow ghastly waters, and upon the pale legions of the water lilies. And the man listened to the sighs of the water lilies, and to the murmur that came up from among them. And I lay close within my covert, and observed the actions of the man. And the man trembled in the solitude, but the night waned, and he sat upon the rock. Then I went down into the recesses of the morass, and waited afar in among the wilderness of the lilies, and called unto the hippopotami which dwelt among the fens in the recesses of the morass. And the hippopotami heard my call, and came with the behemoth unto the foot of the rock, and roared loudly and fearfully beneath the moon. And I lay close within my covert, and observed the actions of the man. And the man trembled in the solitude, but the night waned, and he sat upon the rock. Then I cursed the elements with the curse of tumult, with a frightful tempest gathered in the heaven, where before there had been no wind. And the heaven became livid with the violence of the tempest, and the rain beat down upon the head of the man, and the floods of the river came down, and the river was tormented into foam, and the water lilies shrieked within their beds, and the forest crumbled before the wind, and the thunder rolled, and the lightning fell, and the rock rocked to its foundation. And I lay close within my covert, and observed the actions of the man. And the man trembled in the solitude, but the night waned, and he sat upon the rock. Then I grew angry, and cursed with the curse of silence the river, and the lilies, and the wind, and the forest, and the heaven, and the thunder, and the sighs of the water lilies, and they became accursed, and were still. And the moon ceased to totter up its pathway to heaven, and the thunder died away, and the lightning did not flash, and the clouds hung motionless, and the waters sunk to their level and remained, and the trees ceased to rock, and the water lilies sighed no more, and the murmur was heard no longer from among them, nor any shadow of sound throughout the vast, illimitable desert. And I looked upon the characters of the rock, and they were changed, and the characters were silence. And mine eyes fell upon the countenance of the man, and his countenance was wan with terror. And hurriedly he raised his head from his hand, and stood forth upon the rock, and listened. But there was no voice throughout the vast, illimitable desert, and the characters upon the rock were silence. And the man shuddered, and turned his face away, and fled afar off in haste, so that I beheld him no more. Now, there are fine tales in the volumes of the Magi, in the iron-bound, melancholy volumes of the Magi. Therein, I say, are glorious histories of the heaven, and of the earth, and of the mighty sea, and of the genii that overruled the sea, and the earth, and the lofty heaven. There was much lore, too, in the sayings that were said by the Sibyls, and holy, holy things were heard of old by the dim leaves that trembled around Dodona. But as Allah liveth, that fable which the demon told me, as he sat by my side in the shadow of the tomb, I hold to be the most wonderful of all. And as the demon made an end of his story, he fell back within the cavity of the tomb and laughed. And I could not laugh with the demon, and he cursed me because I could not laugh. And the lynx, which dwelleth forever in the tomb, came out therefrom, and lay down at the feet of the demon, and looked him steadily in the face. And there you have it, the very weird mind of Edgar Allan Poe. Let me know in the comments if you'd like me to do more. I have a half-hearted request, at least I think, for me to do The Raven, which I can do maybe later this week. Obviously, one of his best-known pieces, and one I thoroughly enjoy. As a person who occasionally is known by the name Raven. It's suiting. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope my reading did some justice to the piece. And I was really grateful to have a reason to get dressed up and to do my makeup and all of that for you guys because, well, I've been living in pajamas for a week. I think all of us have. But every now and then, it's good to get dressed up. I think now I will go back to my endless watching of the Vikings on Amazon Prime because, well, Vikings. But yeah, if you have any other suggestions for stuff you'd like me to read to you, just pop them in the comments and I'll see what I can do, okay? So we're in this thing together. It looks like we're housebound until at least the end of April. I just got the order through on my phone that my county is locked down until at least May 4th. So there you have it. I guess that means no May the 4th at Disneyland for me. Shame. Anyway, yeah, so there you go. You guys have a wonderful day. Be safe. Wash your hands. Don't go out unless you have to. And do that fast and get back home. And then wash your hands again. Yeah, and we'll get through this. I promise. Thanks for watching.